Hi, Karen.
Oh, hey, Sally.
I'm Sally. I'm going to be the resource nurse for tonight. How are things going in your room?
I think they're okay. I think my patient's just having some earlies.
Okay. So I'm looking at your tracing here, and you think that these are earlies? Why do you think that they're earlies?
Well, they're just coming with the contraction, so it just must be head compression.
Okay. So do you have that blue pocket card?
Which blue pocket card?
That blue pocket card that Shannon gave you in orientation. Do you have that card?
Oh, you mean this one?
Yes. Can you pull that out?
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a look at this card. On this card, you're going to notice that the chart to determine what type of D cells you have is right on the blue card now. So we're going to use this chart to figure out what type of D cell we're having. So when we're looking at intrapartum D cells, the first thing we need to ask ourselves is abrupt or gradual. So what that means is, does it take less than 30 seconds to reach the trough, or does it take more than 30 seconds to reach the trough? That's always the first question we ask ourselves and the first thing we want to know. We can't jump to the end and look at how the D cell finishes until we decide how it starts, what the slope is, or how it gets to the trough.
Okay.
So the first thing we're going to do is determine our baseline. The next thing we're going to do is determine where the D cell starts or leaves the baseline, and then we're going to determine where the D cell reaches the trough. So from here to here, you're going to count how many seconds that takes.
Well, it's like 10 seconds.
Right. So that means that it's less than 30 seconds. So I know then that it has to be abrupt. So I go and look under the abrupt category. Then, after I decide that it's abrupt, I then need to ask myself if there's depth criteria. Does this D cell last 15 by 15? And if I look and I count this D cell, it does in fact last 15 by 15. So now I think that it is a variable D cell. Then I need to think about all the factors that would make this variable D cell complicated or not. And in fact, when I look at this list, this D cell does not have any of the characteristics that would make a D cell complicated. Therefore, I am calling it an uncomplicated variable. Okay, let's take a look at some other D cells. Let's take a look at this D cell right here. I want you to find the baseline.
I'm going to say 120.
Okay, where does it leave the baseline?
Here.
And where does it hit the trough? So now I want you to count how many seconds it takes for it to reach the trough.
10, 20, 30.
30 plus seconds. So when I look on my chart, if it takes more than 30 seconds to reach the trough, that means that that D cell is gradual. And when I see under gradual, it says onset to trough 30 or more seconds, I don't need depth criteria with this D cell. So I don't need to count if it drops by 15 or anything. There are no depth criteria for a gradual D cell. The next thing I'm going to look at, now I'm going to look at the end of the contraction and see if that D cell is recovered or not. So show me where you think the end of the contraction is.
Is it
there?
Here?
Yeah, now look straight up. Is he finished his D cell?
Yes.
Yes, he is. So that means that this D cell is early. Let's look at this D cell. I want you to find me the baseline.
I'll say my baseline's 140.
Okay, where does it leave the baseline?
Here.
Where does it reach the trough?
Here.
So count how many seconds it takes to reach the trough.
20.
Okay, so it's less than 30 seconds to reach the trough, which means it has to be abrupt. So the next thing I need to figure out is, does it meet 15 by 15 depth criteria or not? And I don't think this one meets depth criteria. It does not drop by 15, and the whole event does not last for 15 seconds. So this is actually variability in the baseline. It is not a D cell. Let's move on to the next one. Determine for me where the baseline is.
140.
Where does it leave the baseline? Where does it reach the trough? We're going to say right there. How long does it take to reach the trough?
About just under 30, so maybe 28 seconds.
Okay, so then that means it's abrupt.
Okay.
Does it have depth criteria of 15 by 15?
Yes.
Yes, it does. So we know then it's a variable. Now we're going to look for any characteristics that might make this variable complicated. And the one I think that fits in this situation is failure to return to baseline by the end of the contraction. So if I look to the end of my contraction,
Here.
that decel is still going on. So look straight up. He's still having his decel. So this is a complicated variable, failure to return to baseline by the end of the contraction. Let's take a look at one more decel. So find the baseline.
Are we saying 170?
Yeah. Where does it leave the baseline? There.
Here.
Where does it trough?
Here.
So how many seconds does it take to reach the trough?
10, 20, about 35.
35 seconds. So when we look on our chart, 35 seconds to reach the trough means it's gradual. And that also means that I don't need any depth criteria. So if I see it move off the baseline, all I need to see is that it moves from the baseline. It doesn't have to drop by any specific amount. So then I know it's either early or late. Now I'm going to look to the end of the contraction.
Here.
Is this decel recovered by the end of the contraction?
No.
No, it is not. So that means this decel is late.